They voted me out of the family on Thanksgiving, so I exposed the cheating and cut them off for good. I sat there at the long oak table in my in-laws' massive Virginia estate, the kind of place that screamed old money and older grudges. A Thanksgiving spread that could have fed a small army lay before us. The air was thick with tension, heavier than the gravy being passed around, and I could feel it pressing down on me like a wet blanket. My wife, Clarissa, had that smirk on her face, the tight-lipped one she always wore when she was about to drop some smug little bombshell she'd been cooking up. I should have known something was coming. The signs were all there, plain as day. She'd been too quiet all afternoon, her eyes darting around the room like she was waiting for her cue. The turkey sat there untouched, steam still rising from it, and I was just reaching for my fork when she stood up and tapped her wineglass with a spoon. The clinking sound cut through the chatter like a gunshot, and everyone went silent, all eyes on her. "Before we carve the turkey," she said, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she used when she wanted to sound noble, "we have an announcement." I froze, my hand hovering over the mashed potatoes, and watched her pause for effect, soaking up the attention. "We voted," she went on, her smirk widening into something sharper, "and you're not family anymore." For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. The words didn't sink in right away, they just floated there, absurd and heavy. Then the laughter started. Her brother, Silas, sparked out a loud guffaw and raised his glass like it was a toast to my execution. Brielle, his wife, clapped her hands together, her sharp little giggles piercing the air. Even Calvin, my father-in-law, leaned back in his chair with a smug nod, like he just won a bet. Evelyn, my mother-in-law, didn't laugh. But she didn't look surprised either, just stared at me with those cold, calculating eyes of hers. I didn't move. My pulse stayed steady, even as the room spun around me with their mocking cheers. It wasn't shock keeping me calm, it was something else, something I'd been holding on to for a long time. I'd seen this coming, not the exact words maybe, but the sentiment. The way they'd been treating me for years, like I was some hired hand instead of a husband, a son-in-law, a man with a backbone. Clarissa stood there, waiting for me to react, probably expecting me to beg or storm out in a huff. But I didn't give her the satisfaction. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, reached down to the bag I'd brought with me, just a plain black messenger bag I'd tossed under the table, and pulled out a thick manila folder. The laughter died down a little as I set it on the table with a soft thud, right next to the cranberry sauce. "Then I guess you won't need this," I said, my voice flat but clear, loud enough to carry over the sudden quiet. Clarissa's smirk faltered, just for a second, and I caught it, the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Silas tilted his head, curious, and Brielle stopped clapping, her hands hovering mid-air. Calvin's smug look hardened into something wary, like he sensed a shift he hadn't planned for. I didn't say anything else. I just sat there, watching them, letting the weight of that folder sink in. It wasn't just paper in there. It was a decade of my life, of their lies, of everything I'd swallowed to keep the peace. And now it was my turn to carve something up, something a lot messier than that turkey still sitting there, waiting for a knife. They didn't know what was coming. How could they? For years I'd been the quiet one, the reliable one, the guy who paid the bills and fixed the problems and never made a fuss. Clarissa probably thought I'd take this like I'd taken everything else, nod, maybe mutter something sarcastic, and let it roll off my back. But not this time. This time, I was done playing their game. The folder sat there like a loaded gun, and I could see it in their faces. They were starting to wonder what I'd been up to, what I'd been holding back. Good. Let them wonder. Let them sweat. I'd spent 10 years building a life with these people, pouring everything I had into it, money, time, patience, and they just laughed in my face and told me I didn't belong. Fine. If I wasn't family, then I didn't owe them a damn thing anymore. I leaned forward slightly, resting my elbows on the table, and met Clarissa's gaze. Her smirk was gone now, replaced by something twitchy, something nervous. She glanced at the folder, then back at me, like she was trying to figure out if I was bluffing. I wasn't. Silas muttered something under his breath to Brielle, but I didn't catch it, didn't need to. The mood had shifted, and I could feel it, the way the air changes right before a storm hits. They'd had their fun, their little vote, their big moment. Now it was my turn. I didn't need to raise my voice or slam my fist on the table to make them listen. That folder was enough. It was everything I'd kept quiet about, everything I'd let slide, everything I'd documented while they thought I was too stupid to notice. And as I sat there, watching their smugness crack, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: control. For once, I wasn't the one on the outside looking in. I was the one holding the cards, and they were about to find out what that meant. Clarissa snatched the folder off the table, her fingers trembling just enough to betray her nerves, though that smug smile still clung to her face like a mask she couldn't take off. She thought she knew me, thought I was bluffing maybe, or that whatever was in there couldn't possibly hurt her. The dining room was dead quiet now, the clinking of silverware and the clatter of plates replaced by the rustle of paper as she flipped open the cover. I sat back in my chair, arms crossed, letting her take it in. Her eyes darted over the first page, then the second, and I could see the moment it hit her, the exact second her world started to crumble. Her smile vanished, her lips parting in a silent gasp, and then came the scream. It wasn't a little yelp or a dramatic cry. It was a raw, jagged sound that tore through the room like a siren, bouncing off the high ceilings and making everyone flinch. She dropped the folder like it was burning her hands, papers spilling across the table, some fluttering to the floor. Silas lunged forward, snatching it up before anyone else could, his brow furrowing as he scanned the pages. I didn't move. I didn't need to. The evidence was all there, laid out in black and white, screenshots, bank statements, emails, a decade's worth of their garbage I'd put up with just to keep things civil. Clarissa staggered back, her chair scraping against the hardwood, and pointed at me with a shaking hand. "You twisted monster," she spat, her voice cracking like she was about to cry or scream again. I didn't flinch. "Everything in that folder is real," I said, calm as ever, my words cutting through the chaos. "You just never thought I'd fight back." Silas kept flipping through the pages, his jaw tightening with every line he read. Brielle leaned over his shoulder, her eyes wide, her manicured nails digging into his arm. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. But it wasn't a question for me, it was for Clarissa, who was still staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Calvin's face had gone pale, his smug nod long gone, and Evelyn was gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white. The laughter from a minute ago was a distant memory now, replaced by gasps and murmurs, as the reality of what I'd done sank in. I'd been collecting this stuff for years, every time they asked for money, every time they lied to my face, every time they treated me like a doormat. I'd kept it all, quiet and patient, waiting for the right moment, and here it was. Clarissa's screams still echoed in my head, but I didn't feel sorry for her, not even a little. She'd spent our whole marriage acting like she was the queen, and I was just some loyal servant there to nod and pay and shut up. The folder was my answer to that, a big no to every game she played. There were bank transfers showing the thousands I'd sent her family over the years, money for Silas's failing startup, for her dad's medical bills, for her cousin's emergencies that were never really emergencies. There were emails where she begged me for cash, swearing it was the last time, only to turn around and ask again a month later. And the screenshots, God, the screenshots, messages to her friends, laughing about how easy I was to manipulate, how I'd never catch on. She thought I was too dumb to see it. She was wrong. Silas slammed the folder shut, his face red, and glared at me. "You've been sitting on this," he growled, like I'd betrayed him instead of the other way around. I shrugged. "I've been sitting on a lot of things," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You all made it easy. Never thought I'd push back, did you?" He didn't answer, just shoved the folder at Brielle, who started flipping through it again, her mouth moving like she was reading out loud to herself. Clarissa sank into her chair, her hands covering her face, and I could hear her breathing hard, like she was trying not to lose it completely. Evelyn finally spoke, her voice sharp and shaky. "How could you do this to us?" she asked, like I was the villain here. I almost laughed. "Do what?" I said. "Tell the truth? You're the ones who voted me out. I'm just showing you what that means." The room felt smaller now, the walls closing in with every word they threw at me. Calvin cleared his throat, trying to take charge like he always did, but his voice was weak. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, glancing at the scattered papers. "We can talk this out." I shook my head. "No misunderstanding," I said. "It's all right there. You don't get to laugh me out of the family and then pretend it's fine." He didn't have a comeback for that. Just sat there looking old and tired. Brielle muttered something about lawyers, and Silas started pacing, running his hands through his hair. Clarissa lifted her head, her eyes red, and stared at me. "You're ruining everything," she whispered, like that was supposed to hurt me. I leaned forward, meeting her gaze. "No," I said. "You did that. I'm just done cleaning up the mess." I could feel the weight of their stares, all of them waiting for me to back down, to apologize, to smooth it over like I always had. But I wasn't that guy anymore. The folder was my line in the sand, and I'd crossed it. They'd spent years taking my money, my time, my dignity, and I'd let them because I thought that's what family did. I thought I was being strong, holding it together for Clarissa, for all of them. But they didn't see it that way. To them, I was just a tool, something to use until it broke. Well, I wasn't broken. I was awake. And as I sat there, watching them scramble and curse and fall apart, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, free. They could call me a monster all they wanted. I knew the truth, and now they did too. I sat there in the wreckage of that Thanksgiving dinner, the folder still open on the table like a wound nobody could close, and watched the family I'd spent a decade trying to please turn into strangers right in front of me. Clarissa was always the golden girl, had been since the day I met her. All bright smiles and big dreams, the kind of woman who could talk her way into anything and out of everything. Her parents worshipped her like she was some kind of saint, their perfect daughter who could do no wrong. To them, I was just the guy in the background, the steady one who showed up with a paycheck and a handshake, the man she'd married because she deserved someone responsible. That's what Evelyn told me once, years ago, when we were still pretending to get along. She said it like it was a compliment, but it stuck in my craw even then. Responsible. That's all I was to them, a wallet with legs. It started small, the way they leaned on me. Clarissa wanted to go to law school, and I was happy to help. I worked extra shifts, cut corners on my own stuff, so she could chase that dream. She graduated, and I was proud, thought we were building something together. Then came the house. She found this big place we couldn't really afford, but she batted her eyes and said it was our future, so I scraped together the down payment, took on the mortgage, told myself it was worth it. Silas's tech startup was next, some half-baked app idea that never took off. He came to me with his hand out, all nervous laughs and promises, and I wrote the check because Clarissa begged me to support her brother. It tanked, of course, but they didn't blame him. They blamed me for not giving more, like I was supposed to magic up his success. Then there was Penny, Clarissa's cousin, always showing up with some sob story. Her teeth were bad, needed braces, fillings, whatever. So I paid for that too, because Evelyn said family takes care of family, and I didn't want to look like the jerk who said no. Calvin's surgery was the big one. Heart trouble, emergency room, the works. I was there, signing papers, footing bills, driving him to appointments while Clarissa fluttered around being emotional support. I didn't mind at first. I loved her, loved them, thought that's what you do when you're in it for the long haul. But it never stopped. Every time I turned around, there was another handout, another crisis, another reason I had to step up. And I did, over and over, because I didn't want to be the guy who let them down. But the spa, that's where it broke. Clarissa came to me last year with this wild idea, a wellness spa, some fancy place with yoga and smoothies, and a $200,000 loan she wanted me to co-sign. I looked at the numbers, saw the debt we were already carrying, and for once, I said no, just no. No tears, no yelling, just a flat, quiet no. You'd think I'd set the house on fire. She stared at me like I'd slapped her, then stormed off. The next day, the whole family was on my case. Silas called me selfish, said I was holding Clarissa back. Brielle texted me some long rant about how I didn't get her vision. Evelyn pulled the guilt card, all soft and teary, saying, "She's trying so hard, and you're crushing her spirit." Even Calvin got in on it, grumbling about how I wasn't stepping up like a real man. Suddenly, I was toxic, the bad guy, the one who didn't care about their dreams. I saw it then, clear as day. They'd been building up to this for years. The spa was just the excuse. They'd been rehearsing my exit, planning how to paint me as the problem so they could keep their hands clean. Clarissa started staying out late, working on her spa pitch, but I'd hear her on the phone, laughing with her friends about how she'd fix things soon. Silas stopped asking for money directly, went through her instead like I wouldn't notice. Brielle started dropping little digs at family dinners, calling me Mr. Practical with that fake smile of hers. And Calvin, he just watched, nodding along, letting them chip away at me until I was nothing but a shadow in their story. They didn't just turn on me that Thanksgiving. They'd been practicing it, perfecting it, like actors in some twisted play where I was the villain they'd all agreed to hate. Now, with the folder out and the truth spilling across the table, I could see the cracks in their act. Clarissa's hands were shaking as she stared at the papers, her perfect mask slipping. Silas was muttering something to Brielle, probably trying to figure out how to spin this, but his voice was tight, panicked. Evelyn's eyes were wet, but I knew those tears, crocodile tears, meant to make me feel bad, not because she was sorry. Calvin just sat there, deflated, like he'd finally run out of lines. They'd thought I'd never push back, that I'd keep taking it because that's what I'd always done, paid for law school, the house, the surgery, all of it, and never asked for a thank you. But I wasn't their Golden Girls prop anymore. I was done being the guy they could bleed dry and toss aside when they were bored. I leaned back, watching them scramble, and felt the weight lift off my chest. For years, I'd carried Rospanequal to 2 and 2 team, every bill, every favor, every guilt trip, and they'd let me because to them I wasn't family. I was a means to an end, Clarissa's dream, Silas's startup, Penny's teeth, Calvin's heart. They were her story, her people, and I was just the guy who made it happen. But not anymore. The folder was my proof, my way of saying I wasn't the fool they thought I was. They'd rehearsed my exile, sure, but they didn't rehearse this, me fighting back, me walking away. And as I sat there, the turkey still steaming, untouched, I knew one thing for sure: they'd never see me coming because they never really saw me at all. I sat there at the ruined Thanksgiving table, the folder's contents scattered like confetti from a party nobody wanted to attend, and watched the family I'd propped up for years squirm under the weight of their own lies. The air was thick with shock, the kind that hangs heavy when secrets get dragged into the light, and I could feel every eye on me, some angry, some scared, all of them waiting for me to say something. Clarissa was slumped in her chair, her face a mess of tears and fury, but I didn't look away. I'd spent too long looking away, letting her spin her stories, letting them all think I was too soft or too stupid to notice what they were doing. Not anymore. That folder was my voice, loud and clear, and it was screaming everything I'd held back for a decade. It laid out the numbers first: $94,000 over 8 years, drained from my accounts into theirs, piece by piece. Then receipts with little notes like for groceries or emergency car repair, except I knew those groceries were for Silas's poker nights, and that car repair was for Brielle's shopping spree. PayPal transfers to Clarissa, hundreds at a time, with messages saying just this once or I'll pay you back. She never did. Emails from her, long ones full of sob stories about how she needed cash for some crisis, how I was her rock, how I had to help because that's what husbands do. I believed her at first, thought she was struggling, thought I was doing right by her, but then the crises kept coming, and I started saving those emails, started tracking the money, started seeing the pattern. It wasn't help they wanted, it was control. Then came the screenshots, the real gut punch. Messages from Clarissa to her friends, stuff she typed while I was in the next room, thinking we were okay. "He's a walking ATM," she wrote in one, followed by a laughing emoji. Doesn't even blink when I ask for more. Another one to her friend Tara, emotionally dense, but at least he pays the bills. I read that one late at night months ago, sitting in the dark with my phone, and it hit me like a truck, not because it hurt but because it was true to her. That's all I was, a bank account with a heartbeat. Penny, her cousin, was in on it too, in a group chat where she said, "He's too dumb to realize we're using him," and Clarissa replied, "Good thing, keeps the cash flowing." They thought I'd never see it, thought I'd keep smiling and signing checks like some clueless sucker. But I wasn't clueless. I was quiet, and there's a difference. Silas was still holding the folder, his hand shaking as he flipped back to the bank stuff, like he could find a loophole to make it disappear. "This can't be right," he muttered, but his voice was weak, and he wouldn't look at me. Brielle snatched a screenshot from the pile, her eyes scanning it fast, then threw it down like it burned her. "You were spying on us," she snapped, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. I shook my head. "Didn't have to spy," I said, calm and steady. "You left it all out there. I just picked it up." She glared at me, but I could see the panic behind it. She knew I was right. Calvin was next, his face gray, his big hands flat on the table like he was trying to hold himself together. "Son," he started, his voice low, "this is a lot to take in." I didn't let him finish. "Don't call me that," I said. "You don't get to call me that anymore." Evelyn was the last to crack, her fake smile gone, her eyes darting between me and the papers. She'd always played the sweet mom card, the one who'd hug me and thank me for taking care of our girl, but it was all an act. She'd known what they were doing. Hell, she'd encouraged it, dropping hints about how I should step up whenever Clarissa wanted something big. Now she looked like she might cry, but I wasn't buying it. "How long have you been planning this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Long enough," I said. "Long enough to see what you all really think of me." She flinched, and for a second I almost felt bad. Almost. Then I remembered the email she'd sent Clarissa last year, the one I'd found in the folders pile. "He'll cave if you push. He always does." No, I wasn't the one who should feel bad here. Clarissa finally lifted her head, her eyes red and wet, and stared at me like I'd stabbed her in the back. "You're making us look awful," she whispered, her voice hoarse from screaming. "You think this makes you better?" I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table, and met her gaze head on. "I don't care how it makes you look," I said. "I care that it's true. You made your bed. Sleep in it." She blinked, like she couldn't believe I'd talk to her that way, but I was done tiptoeing. The folder wasn't just evidence. It was every time I'd been called to fix their messes, every time I'd swallowed my pride to keep the peace, every time they'd laughed behind my back while I wrote another check. Financial abuse, emotional blackmail, whatever you call it. They'd done it all, and I'd let them because I thought that's what love was. The room was a mess now, papers everywhere, the turkey cold, the gravy congealing in its boat. Silas tossed the folder down, muttering something about lawyers, and Brielle started whispering to him, her hands flailing. Calvin just sat there, staring at nothing, and Evelyn was dabbing her eyes with a napkin, playing the victim like she always did. Clarissa kept looking at me, like she was waiting for me to take it back, to say I didn't mean it, but I did. I meant every word, every page, every dollar they'd taken. They thought I was too dumb to fight, too weak to walk away. They were wrong. I'd been patient, not blind, and now they were seeing the real me, the one who'd had enough. As I sat there, watching them fall apart, I didn't feel angry or sad. I felt awake, like I'd finally opened my eyes after a long, bad dream. They'd used me up, but I wasn't used up. Not yet. I sat there in the chaos of that Thanksgiving mess, the folder's pages still spread out like a map of their betrayal, and watched Silas dig through the pile with a look I hadn't seen on him before, pure, raw confusion. He stopped cold when his fingers landed on a hotel receipt, a crisp little slip of paper that seemed to burn him just a touch. "What the hell is this?" he said, his voice loud enough to snap everyone's heads up. He held it out, the receipt trembling slightly in his hand, and I could see Clarissa's face drain of color, going from red and blotchy to ghost white in a heartbeat. "Don't," she warned, her voice sharp but shaky, like she was trying to scare him off. Too late. Silas didn't listen. He never did when he smelled blood, and handed it to me across the table. "You knew about this?" he asked, his eyes boring into mine. I took the paper, glanced at it, and nodded. "I compiled it," I said, calm as ever. "It's all in there." The receipt was from a fancy hotel in Charleston. 3 nights, room service, spa charges, the works. And there, buried in the fine print, was the kicker. Charges linked to a second guest, Rachel S. I'd found it months ago, tucked into a stack of credit card statements Clarissa thought I'd never check. She told me it was a yoga retreat, some self-care weekend she needed to find her balance. I nodded back then, too tired to argue, but something nagged at me. Maybe the way she wouldn't meet my eyes when she packed her bag, or how she came back smelling like perfume I didn't recognize. So I dug, found the statement, called the hotel pretending to confirm a booking, got the details. Rachel S. wasn't a yoga instructor. She was someone Clarissa had been meeting on the side, someone she'd hidden behind lies and fake smiles while I paid the bills. The room started buzzing, low murmurs rippling through the family like static. Brielle leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she stared at Clarissa. "You said this marriage was solid," she whispered, her voice tight with something that sounded like betrayal. Clarissa didn't answer, just sat there, her hands clenched in her lap, staring at the table like she could will the receipt to disappear. Silas tossed the folder down, his face twisted in disgust. "An affair," he said, louder now, looking from me to her. "You've been screwing around, and he's got proof." Evelyn gasped, a little too dramatic, her hand flying to her chest like she was in some soap opera. Calvin just sat there, his jaw tight, saying nothing. I could feel the shift, them turning on her now, like sharks circling a wounded fish. But I didn't jump in to save her. Not this time. I leaned back in my chair, the receipt still in my hand, and let them stew. I'd known about Rachel for a while, pieced it together from the hotel stays, the late-night work calls, the way Clarissa would get all jumpy if I touched her phone. At first I thought I was paranoid, that I was reading too much into it. But then I found the messages, not the flirty ones she deleted, but the dumb ones she'd forgotten about, like Rachel says hi from a friend who didn't know I wasn't in on it. I didn't confront her then, didn't see the point. She'd just lie, cry, turn it around on me like she always did, say I was controlling, say I didn't trust her. So I kept quiet, kept collecting, kept building that folder until I had enough to bury her excuses. This wasn't about catching her in the act, it was about showing them all who she really was. Silas was pacing now, his hands in his hair, muttering curses under his breath. "All this time," he said, "you've been playing the perfect wife, and he's been what, covering for you?" He shot me a look, half angry, half impressed, like he couldn't decide if I was a saint or a sucker. I shrugged. "Not covering," I said, watching, waiting. Brielle snatched the receipt from me, scanning it again, her lips moving as she read. 3 nights, she said, almost to herself. 3 nights with some woman, and you let him pay for it. That last part was aimed at Clarissa, who flinched but still didn't speak. I could see her trying to think, trying to find a way out, but there wasn't one. Not with the proof right there staring them all in the face. Evelyn finally piped up, her voice wobbly. "Clarissa, honey, tell us this isn't true," she said, reaching for her daughter's hand. Clarissa jerked away, her eyes flashing. "It's not what you think," she snapped, but it sounded hollow, like even she didn't believe it. "What is it then?" Silas shot back, stopping mid-pace to glare at her. "Because it looks like you've been cheating, and he's got the receipts, literally." She opened her mouth, closed it, then looked at me, pleading with her eyes for the first time in years. I didn't budge. "Don't look at me," I said. "You did this. Explain it to them." She didn't, just dropped her head again, silent, and I knew she couldn't talk her way out of this one. The murmurs got louder, the family fracturing right in front of me. Brielle was whispering to Silas something about how long it's been going on, and Evelyn was dabbing her eyes, muttering about poor Joel like I wasn't sitting right there. Calvin cleared his throat, finally breaking his silence. "This is a private matter," he said, his voice gruff. "We don't need to air it out here." I almost laughed. "Too late for that," I said, tapping the folder. "You voted me out. This is what you get instead." He glared at me, but there was no heat in it, just exhaustion, like he knew the game was up. Clarissa's affair wasn't just her secret anymore. It was theirs now, too, and they couldn't unsee it. I sat there, watching them unravel, and felt the strangest thing, relief. Not because she cheated, though that stung, but because it was out. No more pretending, no more swallowing her lies to keep the peace. They'd all thought she was perfect, thought I was the problem, but now they knew. Rachel S. wasn't some yoga guru, she was the other woman, and I'd paid for their little getaway without even knowing it. The folder had done its job, ripped the mask off Clarissa's Golden Girl act, and showed them the truth. As Silas cursed and Brielle hissed and Evelyn sobbed, I stayed quiet, letting it sink in. They could fight over it all they wanted. I was done carrying her secrets or their blame. For once, I wasn't the one cleaning up the mess. I was the one walking away from it. I sat there as the Thanksgiving dinner turned into a battlefield, the folder's secrets still smoking like a lit fuse, and watched the family scramble to make sense of the mess Clarissa had made. The air was thick with tension, the kind that makes your skin itch, and I could feel their eyes darting between me and her, waiting for the next blow. Silas was pacing, muttering about lawyers, while Brielle clutched that hotel receipt like it was a weapon. Clarissa just sat there, head down, hands twisted in her lap, like she could shrink into nothing and escape it all. I didn't say a word, not yet. I reached into my bag again, slow and deliberate, and pulled out a second envelope, this one thinner but heavier in a way they couldn't see. Calvin caught the movement, his tired eyes narrowing, and raised a hand like he could stop me. "What now?" he said, his voice rough, like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. I set the envelope on the table, right where the folder had been, and looked him square in the eye. "Severance," I said. The word hung there, sharp and final, and I let it sink in. Clarissa's head snapped up, her eyes wide, and Evelyn let out a little gasp, her hand flying to her mouth. Silas stopped pacing, turning to stare at me like I'd lost my mind. "Severance?" he repeated, his voice loud and confused. "What the hell does that mean?" I didn't rush to answer, just slid the envelope toward the middle of the table, letting them wonder. Inside were the papers I'd spent weeks getting ready, documents cutting Clarissa off from our joint accounts, stripping her name from my emergency contacts, ending my power of attorney for her parents. It was all there, signed and notarized, every tie I'd had to them severed with a pen stroke. I'd gone to the bank, the lawyer, the insurance office, quietly, methodically, making sure it was airtight. This wasn't a tantrum, this was me taking my life back. Clarissa grabbed the envelope first, her hand shaking so bad she could barely open it. She pulled out the papers, her eyes scanning fast, and I saw the moment it hit her. Her breath caught and she looked up at me, stunned. "You're cutting us off," she said, her voice cracking like she couldn't believe it. Evelyn leaned over, snatching a page from her, and read it too, her face crumpling. "You're just walking away?" she asked, tears brimming in her eyes, like I'd betrayed some sacred promise. I nodded, calm and steady. "No," I said. "I'm walking out. There's a difference." Silas lunged forward, grabbing the rest of the papers, his face red. "You'll regret this," he growled, flipping through them like he could find a way to undo it. I didn't flinch. "No," I said. "I regret not doing it sooner." The room exploded into noise, Evelyn sobbing, Clarissa yelling, Silas cursing. But I just sat there, letting it wash over me. I'd been thinking about this for months, maybe years, even if I didn't admit it to myself. Every time they'd asked for money, every time they guilted me into fixing their problems, I'd felt the chains tightening. The joint accounts were the worst, Clarissa dipping in whenever she wanted, no questions, no apologies. I'd see the withdrawals, hundreds here, thousands there, and she'd shrug it off, say it was for us, even when it was for her spa dreams or Silas's latest flop. The emergency contact thing was her idea too. Said it made sense since I was so reliable, but it just meant I got the calls when Calvin's heart acted up, or Evelyn fell and needed attention. And the power of attorney, that was Calvin, years ago, saying I should handle their affairs in case something happens. I'd said yes to all of it, thinking it made me part of the family. Now I saw it for what it was, a leash. Clarissa was crying now, real tears, not the fake ones she used to get her way. "You can't do this," she said, her voice breaking. "We need you." I almost laughed. Almost. "You needed my money," I said. "You don't need me." She shook her head, desperate, but I wasn't buying it. I'd heard that lie too many times. Seen those tears too often when a bill came due or a plan fell apart. Evelyn was next, her voice soft and pleading. "Joel, please," she said, reaching for my hand across the table. "We're still your family." I pulled back, out of her reach. "Not according to your vote," I said, and she flinched like I'd hit her. Silas threw the papers down, glaring at me. "You think you're so smart," he said. "You're nothing without us." I met his eyes, unflinching. "We'll see," I said. The truth was, I'd been nothing with them, nothing but a tool, a safety net, a guy they could count on to say yes. Cutting them off wasn't just about the money or the legal stuff. It was about me, about taking back the pieces of myself I'd given away. I'd spent years tied to their chaos, bank accounts I couldn't control, phone calls in the middle of the night, decisions I didn't get to make. Every time I tried to pull back, they'd reel me in with guilt or promises or that damn word, family. But family doesn't vote you out over turkey and stuffing. Family doesn't bleed you dry and laugh about it behind your back. I'd been their anchor, their ATM, their fix-it guy, and they'd taken it all for granted. Now I was done. I stood up, slow and steady, and grabbed my bag. The room went quiet again, all eyes on me, like they thought I'd change my mind if they stared hard enough. Clarissa's voice broke the silence, small and scared. "Where are you going?" she asked. I slung the bag over my shoulder and looked at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in years. "Away," I said. "That's all you need to know." Silas snorted, like it was a joke, but I didn't care. Evelyn started crying louder, and Calvin just watched me, his face unreadable. I didn't wait for more. I turned and walked toward the door, the papers still scattered on the table behind me. They could keep them, fight over them, burn them, whatever. I didn't need them anymore. The severance was done, and so was I. As I stepped out into the cold November air, I felt lighter than I had in years. They'd regret losing me, maybe, but me? I was already free. I left that Thanksgiving disaster behind me, the echoes of Clarissa's cries and Silas's curses fading as I walked out the door of that big Virginia estate and into the night. The cold air hit my face like a slap, but it felt good, clean, sharp, like it was waking me up. I got in my truck, tossed my bag on the passenger seat, and drove off without looking back. I didn't have a plan right then, just a need to get away, so I headed to a cabin I'd rented by the lake a few weeks back. I'd found it online one night when I couldn't sleep, scrolling through listings like I was looking for an escape hatch. It was small, cheap, tucked away in the woods, perfect. I'd booked it on a whim, not even sure why, but now it felt like the only place I belonged. The drive took a couple of hours, the road winding through dark trees and empty fields, my headlights cutting through the quiet. I didn't turn on the radio, didn't need the noise. For the first time in years, I wasn't running to fix someone else's problem. No phone buzzing with Clarissa's latest emergency. No late-night calls from Evelyn about Calvin's health. No texts from Silas begging for cash. Just me and the hum of the engine, the tires on the pavement, the world slipping by outside. I got to the cabin around midnight, a little wooden place with a sagging porch and a view of the water. I unlocked the door, dropped my bag, and stood there in the dark, listening to the silence. It was so still I could hear my own breathing, and it hit me. This was peace. 3 days went by like that. 3 days of nothing but me, the lake, and the woods. I'd wake up slow, no alarm, no rush, just the sun creeping through the curtains. I'd make coffee in an old pot I found in the kitchen, sit on the porch with a mug, and watch the water ripple in the breeze. No one needed me to sign anything, pay anything, be anything. I chopped some wood I found out back, built a fire at night, sat there with the crackle and the warmth, and let my mind wander. I thought about the folder, the severance papers, the way their faces had twisted when I walked out. I thought about Clarissa, about how I loved her once, really loved her, the kind of love that makes you stupid. I thought about how that love had turned into something else, something heavy and sour, and how I'd let it happen because I didn't know how to stop it. But mostly, I thought about me, about what I wanted, what I'd lost, what I could still find. The 4th day, it started. My phone, which I'd left on just in case, lit up with a text from Clarissa. "Joel filed for separation," it said, her words short and sharp. "Are you happy now?" I stared at it, the screen glowing in the dim cabin light, and felt nothing. No guilt, no panic, just a blank space where those feelings used to be. Joel was me, of course. She typed it wrong, or maybe she meant it as some jab like I was a stranger now. I didn't reply. Another one came an hour later. "I can't believe you'd do this to me." Still nothing from me. Then the voicemails, her voice high and shaky, saying she was falling apart, saying I'd ruined her life. I listened to one, just to see if it had hit me different, but it didn't. She sounded like she always did when she wanted something. Desperate, loud, like the world owed her a rescue. I deleted it halfway through. Evelyn was next, her messages piling up like clockwork. "Clarissa is a mess," she wrote. "Calvin's health is worse. Silas isn't eating, not sleeping, come fix this. That one almost got me, almost. I could picture her sitting in that big house, typing it out with her sad little frown, knowing I'd always come running before. Calvin's heart, her tears, Clarissa's tantrums. I'd fix them all, every time, because they'd trained me to. But not now. I set the phone down, walked to the kitchen and brewed another pot of coffee. I didn't owe them a damn thing, not a word, not a visit, not a dime. They'd voted me out, laughed me out, and now they wanted me back because the mess was too big without me. Tough luck. I took my coffee outside, sat on the porch steps, and watched the lake shimmer under the gray sky. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it. I'd scheduled a dentist appointment the day before, something I'd put off for years because I was too busy handling their chaos. I'd called a buddy too, one I hadn't seen since Clarissa started filling my weekends with family stuff. He laughed when I told him I was free, said we should grab a beer soon. Small things, normal things, but they felt huge, like I was building something new, something mine. The silence wasn't just quiet anymore, it was space, room to breathe, to think, to figure out who I was when I wasn't their errand boy. By the third voicemail from Clarissa, I turned the phone off. I didn't need to hear it, didn't want to. I knew what she'd say, more tears, more blame, more you have to help me. Same with Evelyn, more guilt, more family talk, more reasons I should drop everything and run back. But I wasn't running anywhere. I finished my coffee, went inside, and grabbed a book I'd brought, an old paperback I'd been meaning to read for years. I sat by the fire, turned the pages, let the words fill the quiet. The lake stretched out beyond the window, calm and steady, and I felt it in me too, a calm I hadn't known I could have. 3 days of silence had turned into 4, and I wasn't counting anymore. They could call, cry, beg all they wanted. I was here, not there, and for once, that was enough. I was sitting by the fire in that little lake cabin, the quiet wrapping around me like a blanket, when Christmas Eve rolled in, almost a month since I'd walked out of that Thanksgiving nightmare. The wood popped and hissed, the only sound in the room, and I'd just poured myself a glass of wine, something cheap I'd picked up at a gas station on the way up. I wasn't big on wine, but it felt right, something to mark the night, to sit with alone. The phone had been off for days, charging in a drawer I hadn't opened, and I liked it that way. No buzz, no begging, just me and the glow of the flames. I'd spent the day hiking around the lake, boots crunching on frozen ground, the cold air stinging my lungs in a good way. It was simple, clean, mine. Then my phone dinged, a single text that slipped through before I'd turned it off again, Evelyn pulling me back to them. I fished it out of the drawer, just curious enough to look. It was a photo, their family room, the big one with the high ceilings and the fancy chandelier, all decked out for Christmas. The tree stood in the corner, lights twinkling, but the pile of presents underneath was smaller than usual, way smaller. Her message was short. It doesn't feel the same without you. No sorry, no we were wrong. Just that, pure manipulation, soft and sneaky, like she'd spent all day crafting it to hit me right in the chest. I stared at it, the wine glass cold in my hand, and waited for the guilt to come. It didn't. I'd seen this move before, Evelyn's specialty, dangling some sad little picture or story to make me feel like I'd abandoned them. Last year it was Calvin's too weak to carve the ham, and I'd rushed over with a knife and a smile. Not this time. Then Clarissa's text came through, right on cue, like they'd planned it. Ellie misses her uncle, she wrote. Just come for her. Ellie was Silas's kid, a sweet little girl who'd always liked me, and I liked her too. Used to bring her candy, play games with her when the adults were too busy arguing. That one stung a little, I won't lie. Ellie didn't deserve this mess. But I knew Clarissa, knew she'd weaponize anything to reel me in. Sure enough, the next text came a minute later. Also, we're behind on the house. The bank's calling. I thought you should know. There it was, the hook, the real reason, wrapped up in kid talk and holiday cheer. Always an ask, always a crisis, always me as the fix. I set the phone down, took a sip of wine and stared into the fire. They weren't slick, they were desperate. I could picture it, Evelyn in her perfect sweater, arranging that photo just so, making sure the tree looked lonely enough to tug at me, Clarissa pacing the kitchen, typing fast, throwing Ellie's name in like a lifeline, then sliding in the money bit because that's what it always came back to. The house payment, our house technically, though I hadn't lived there since I left. I'd stopped the joint account, sure, but the mortgage was still in both our names, and she hadn't paid a dime since I walked out. The bank probably was calling, and she probably was scared, but that wasn't my problem anymore. She'd had a month to figure it out, sell something, get a job, ask Silas for once. Instead, she ran back to me, like I was still her safety net. I wasn't. I got up, walked to the window, and looked out at the lake, dark and still under the night sky, a thin layer of ice catching the moonlight. My breath fogged the glass, and I thought about last Christmas, me hauling presents into that house, fixing the lights when they flickered, playing Santa for Ellie, while Clarissa sipped eggnog and Silas drank too much. I'd been exhausted by the end, but I'd smiled through it, thinking that's what you do for family. Now I saw it different. They'd taken it all. My time, my energy, my money, and given me nothing but a pat on the back and a new bill to pay. This year I had a fire, a glass of wine, and nobody asking me for a damn thing. It wasn't lonely. It was perfect. I went back to the phone, stared at those texts again. It doesn't feel the same. Ellie misses her uncle. The bank's calling. Each one a pull, a string they thought they could yank to drag me back. I'd fallen for it so many times. Raced over when Evelyn cried about Calvin. Bailed Clarissa out when she overspent. Played the good guy because I hated letting them down, but they let me down over and over and laughed about it behind my back. The folder proved that. The screenshots, the receipts, the truth. They didn't miss me. They missed what I did for them. I blocked Evelyn's number first, then Clarissa's, my thumb steady on the screen, no hesitation, no second thoughts. The phone went dark, and I tossed it back in the drawer. I sat down by the fire again, the wine warming in my hand, and let the quiet settle back in. The cabin smelled like pine and smoke, the kind of smell that sticks to your clothes and feels like home. I didn't need their tree, their presents, their guilt trips. I had this, a night that was mine, a life that was mine. Ellie's face popped into my head, her little smile, and I felt a twinge. Maybe I'd send her something later, a toy or a card, when this all cooled down. But not now, not like this, not because Clarissa dangled her like bait. The house? Let the bank take it. Let Clarissa figure it out. I'd figure my own way too. New place, new start, no strings. The fire crackled, and I took another sip, the wine sharp on my tongue. Outside the wind picked up, rattling the windows, but I didn't mind. It was just noise, not need. I thought about tomorrow, Christmas Day, alone, maybe a walk by the lake, maybe some eggs on the stove, simple stuff, good stuff. No rushing, no fixing, no pretending. I'd spent years chasing their version of family, thinking it'd make me whole. Now I was here, by myself, and I was thankful, not for them, not anymore, but for this, for the fire, the quiet, the chance to breathe. They could keep their ghosts of Christmas past. I was done haunting myself for them. I finished the wine, set the glass down, and smiled into the flames. Peace wasn't just a word anymore, it was real, and it was mine. I was back in the real world now, the lake cabin a memory as January hit hard with its gray skies and biting wind. I'd moved into a cheap motel while I sorted things out, new job, new place, new everything. The cabin had been my breather, but I couldn't hide there forever. Life kept moving, and so did I. My phone stayed quiet since I blocked Clarissa and Evelyn, the silence a gift I wasn't ready to give up. But they found ways. People always do when they're desperate. It started with calls from numbers I didn't know, voices claiming to be lawyers or friends of Calvin, talking about the family trust. I'd revoked my role in that mess back with the severance papers, so I hung up every time, no words wasted. Then came the letter, handwritten, 3 pages of Evelyn's neat cursive, slipped under my motel door like a ghost sneaking in. I found it one morning, coming back from a coffee run, the envelope plain white with my name scrawled on it. I knew her writing, tight, controlled, like she was trying to keep everything together, even on paper. I picked it up, felt its weight, and almost tossed it right then, but something made me stop. Curiosity, maybe, or just wanting to see how far she'd go. I sat on the lumpy motel bed, the room smelling like stale smoke and cheap cleaner, and opened it. Dear Joel, it started, all formal and soft, like she was writing to a stranger she wanted to charm. You were always the strong one, she went on, her words dripping with that old guilt trip honey. We've leaned on you too much. I see that now. I snorted. Too late for that. But I kept reading, the paper crinkling in my hands. She wrote about Clarissa next, 3 paragraphs of it. She's alone, Evelyn said, lost without you, crying every night. She painted this picture of my wife, ex-wife soon enough, sitting in that big house, broken and fragile, like I'd left her to drown. She made mistakes, Evelyn admitted. But she loves you, Joel. She needs you. I could hear her voice in my head, that pleading tone she'd used 100 times to pull me back. And Calvin, sick. Silas is broke. Help us. Then came the money part, right on schedule. We're underwater on the mortgage. Calvin can't work, and I'm too old to start over. The bank's threatening to take the house. It ended with a big finish, please, for your father-in-law, one last time. 3 pages of that. Guilt, love, money, all twisted together like a rope to drag me home. I held the letter, read it slow, let every word sink in. The motel room was quiet except for the hum of the heater, and I sat there, staring at her handwriting, waiting to feel something, anger maybe, or that old pull to fix it all. Nothing came. I'd spent years jumping at letters like this. Not written ones, but phone calls, texts, visits. "Calvin's in the hospital," she'd say, and I'd be there with my checkbook. "Clarissa's car broke down and I'd pay the mechanic." "We're family," she'd whisper, and I'd nod, thinking that's what it meant, giving until I had nothing left. But this was different. This wasn't love or family or even regret. This was access. Her trying to claw her way back into my wallet, my life, my guilt. I saw it clear as day, and it didn't touch me. I got up, walked to the little trash bin by the door, and dropped the letter in. It landed on a coffee cup and some takeout wrappers. Just another piece of junk. I didn't rip it up or burn it. Didn't need to. It was nothing to me. Just words on a page from a woman who never cared about me. Only what I could do for her. I grabbed my coat, headed out to the diner across the street, and ordered a burger. The waitress smiled. The food was hot, and I ate alone, thinking about the day ahead. A job interview, a lead on an apartment, small steps forward. Evelyn's letter didn't follow me there. It stayed in the trash where it belonged. I'd been the strong one for them too long, strong enough to pay, to fix, to carry their weight while they laughed and lied and lived off me. The folder had shown me that, and the severance papers had sealed it. Clarissa, alone? She'd been alone with Rachel S. in Charleston, hadn't she? The mortgage? They'd had my money for years, let them sell the damn spa equipment or Silas's car. Calvin's health? I wasn't his nurse or his bank anymore. One last time, she'd written, but there had been 100 last times, and I was done counting. They'd voted me out, thought they could kick me and keep me on the hook anyway. They were wrong. Back at the motel, I checked my phone. Still quiet, no new tricks from them. I dodged the trust calls, ignored the letter, and it felt good, like shedding a skin I'd outgrown. I lay on the bed, the springs creaking under me, and thought about what came next. A new job was lined up. Nothing fancy, just steady work at a hardware store, something I could build on. The apartment was small, a one-bedroom downtown, but it was mine. No joint accounts, no family baggage. I'd even started talking to a guy I knew from way back, planning a fishing trip, something I hadn't done since Clarissa Angler's hackle was growing back fast. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in too long. The apartment wasn't much, plain walls, a couch I'd found on sale, a bed that didn't sag, but it was mine. No joint accounts, no mortgage I couldn't pay alone, no family breathing down my neck. I'd hung a couple of pictures from the hikes, shots of the lake and the trees, nothing fancy, just reminders of where I'd been. The job wasn't a career, but it was honest, clock in, clock out, no one leaning on me to save their dreams. The therapist said I was reclaiming myself, and I guess that's true. I wasn't the guy who fixed everything anymore. I was the guy who walked away, who built something new, who didn't owe anyone a damn thing. I finished eating, cleaned up, and stepped onto the tiny balcony, barely big enough for a chair, but it faced the street, and I could watch the world go by. Kids rode bikes below, a dog barked somewhere, life kept moving. Clarissa's letter didn't follow me out here. "We're still family," she'd written. Like 3 words could erase a decade of lies, of using me up, of voting me out like I was trash. Maybe she meant it, in her twisted way, but it didn't matter. Family wasn't a word you got to throw around after what they'd done. Family didn't laugh at you, bleed you dry, cheat on you, then beg you back when the money ran out. I'd given them everything, my love, my time, my trust, and they'd turned it into a joke. Now I had this, and it was better. I went back inside, locked the door, and turned concurrent assistant, off the lights. The apartment was dark, quiet, mine. I lay in bed, the sheets cool against my skin, and thought about tomorrow, work, then maybe a beer with Tom, maybe a walk if the rain held off. Small things, good things, my things. Clarissa and her family were out there somewhere, sinking or swimming, but I didn't care. They weren't my burden anymore. I closed my eyes, the street sounds fading, and felt that calm settle again. Not just quiet, but freedom. I wasn't surviving their mess, I was living my life, one day at a time, and it was enough. More than enough, it was everything.